Millions of us spend our evenings streaming forensic documentaries, scrolling through internet sleuth forums, and consuming podcasts about cold cases. But this massive, multi-billion-dollar obsession with real-life murder actually has a very specific starting point in American history. In September 1922, a young couple walking through an apple orchard in rural New Jersey stumbled upon a grim discovery that would write the blueprint for the true crime genre. Between them lay torn-up love letters they had written to each other, and Hall's calling card was placed deliberately at his feet. The brutal execution of an illicit couple was horrific on its own, yet the ensuing public reaction would permanently sabotage the police investigation before it even began. The orchard straddled the border of Somerset and Middlesex counties. When the bodies were found, the two responding police departments argued over who actually had jurisdiction. While they bickered, they failed to secure the perimeter. Word quickly spread through town, and a crowd gathered. Without a police barricade, thousands of curiosity seekers trampled directly through the crime scene. They destroyed footprints, moved the bodies, and literally passed Hall's calling card around the crowd to look at it. The morbid fascination escalated into a frenzy. Souvenir hunters completely stripped the crabapple tree of its branches and bark. Enterprising locals even scooped up the blood-stained dirt around the bodies and sold it in bags for 25 cents apiece. Because the authorities completely lost control of the site, any reliable physical evidence vanished within hours. With no forensics to guide them, investigators and the public were left with nothing but gossip. Suspicion immediately fell on the priest's wife, Frances Stevens Hall. She was an heir to the massive Johnson & Johnson fortune, living in a completely different social stratum than Eleanor Mills. Investigators theorized that Frances, motivated by jealousy, orchestrated the hit with the help of her two brothers, Henry and Willie. The staged bodies and exposed love letters strongly suggested a revenge killing meant to humiliate the cheating couple. But without a secured crime scene, the local grand jury had no physical evidence to indict anyone. The case went completely dormant. 4 years later, William Randolph Hearst needed a story. His newspaper, the New York Daily Mirror, was locked in a fierce circulation war with rival publications. He ordered his reporters to dig up the Hall Mills murders and run it on the front page as a cynical ploy to sell papers. The Mirror published wildly sensationalized accounts of the crime, introducing entirely new and highly dubious clues. Suddenly, they claimed, one of the brothers' fingerprints was on the calling card. Then they heavily promoted a surprise eyewitness who conveniently stepped forward to say she saw the whole thing. The tabloid relentlessly stoked public outrage to boost sales. The political pressure became so intense that the governor ordered a second investigation, resulting in the immediate indictment and trial of Frances Stevens Hall and her brothers. In November 1926, the murder trial opened at the Somerset County Courthouse. Over 300 reporters descended on the small town, turning the streets surrounding the courthouse into a literal carnival. On weekends, vendors pushed through crowds of tourists, hawking popcorn, peanuts, and balloons to the thousands of cars arriving daily. Inside, the prosecution's star witness took the stand. Her name was Jane Gibson, though the tabloids quickly dubbed her the Pig Woman because she raised hogs near the orchard. She claimed she had been riding her mule that night and watched the wealthy family commit the murders, though her story changed depending on which reporter she spoke to. Because of a sudden illness, Gibson was wheeled directly into the crowded courtroom in a hospital bed to deliver her testimony. As she spoke from the mattress, her own mother sat in the front row of the gallery, loudly screaming, "She's a liar! A liar!" The legal proceedings had lost any connection to uncovering the truth. The courtroom was operating as a highly lucrative serialized drama for the American public. The defense attorneys brilliantly leveraged the social divide. They presented Frances and her brothers to the jury not as criminal suspects, but as refined, church-going citizens, simply too polite and upper class to commit such a messy crime. The jury bought the argument. Frances, Henry, and Willie were all completely acquitted, and the state closed the legal case forever. Decades later, modern retired detectives looking at the case files tend to apply Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is that Frances and her brothers did exactly what the prosecution alleged. Edward Hall was shot with a downward trajectory, and Eleanor Mills was shot 3 times with varying angles. This pattern suggests a close-quarters, controlled execution, likely from the front seat of a car while the victims were in the back. The killers then drove the bodies to the orchard, carefully laying them out to broadcast a specific message about infidelity. The family's massive wealth allowed them to hire the best legal defense team in the country. It also enabled them to use the overwhelming noise of the tabloid coverage as a smokescreen to walk away untouched. In the 1930s, the Lindbergh baby kidnapping would eventually overtake Hall Mills in the public memory, but this New Jersey murder had already laid the foundation for how we consume crime. The tabloid frenzy of 1922 proved that real, bloody violence could be repackaged and sold on a massive scale. It taught publishers that if they sensationalized the details and treated suspects like characters in a novel, the public would buy it every single day. When a double homicide is turned into a commodity and a courtroom is transformed into a spectator sport, the actual pursuit of justice stops. The truth gets trampled under the feet of the audience.